They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I decided to serve it like a master chef. Slow, precise, and impossible to swallow without tasting every single regret first. My name is Elise. I am 34, and for most of my adult life I believed the vows we make are anchors, not nooses. I believed in steady work, in compromise, in the little daily sacrifices that make a marriage last. I thought honesty was mutual. I thought my husband, Mark, was a man with the same currency of truth I kept in my pockets. I was wrong. It began, as many endings do, with a small lie. At first it was domestic trivia. A missed call, a late meeting, a story that didn't quite line up. He told me he was taking on a project out of town. He said the extra hours were for a client who needed him. I believed him. I steamed vegetables at home while he texted under the restaurant's tablecloth. I ironed shirts while he moved money into accounts that I did not recognize. The ordinary deceptions were so quiet they almost hummed, like a refrigerator running in another room. I discovered the first real proof on a Thursday afternoon when our daughter, Nora, was at her piano lesson and the house smelled like lemon cleaner and old wood. I was backing up files on our shared laptop when I found a folder buried under invoices labeled, simply, Reserve. Inside were transfer receipts, messages to an obvious alias, and a list of properties, none of which had any connection to Mark's declared work. And then there was an email thread, months long, to a woman whose name I had never heard. The subject line read, Plan for the house, finalize after closing. My breath came shallow. The house. The house I had chosen paint colors for at midnight. The house I had wrestled with banks for. The house where Nora had drawn her handprints on the pantry door. For a moment, the world narrowed to the white of the screen. I felt sudden ridiculous nausea. Not because he had a lover, but because he had been planning to take the thing I had thought we owned together, and had been doing it with the meticulous calm of someone planning a budget. Anger is primitive and immediate. I could have screamed, broken windows, thrown his shirts in the yard. For about 30 seconds, the idea of furious theatrics had a siren song appeal. But I had Nora to think about, bills to keep, a reputation to preserve for the sake of small things that mattered. So I breathed, copied everything. I made backups. I tucked evidence into encrypted drives and hid the drives in a place a husband would never think to look, a false bottom in the old tool chest where my father had stashed his receipts. Revenge, I would learn, is as much about what you protect as what you break. For the next month I constructed a quiet life of observation. I smiled at Sunday breakfasts and listened to Mark's explanations like a professional auditor. I let him believe I was ignorant. People underestimate the weapon that is assumed weakness. He grew comfortable again. He walked with the swagger of a man who thinks secrets are safe and time is on his side. But while he walked, I worked. I dug through bank statements, traced the money trail, and slowly the pattern emerged. Shell companies, a nominee agent, transfers timed just after paydays. He had a consultant, an elegant, plausible shell that masked the actual recipient. The properties were being purchased under names that meant nothing to us on paper. But names are not magic. They hide things only until someone insists on following the paper. I recruited 2 allies, both ordinary women who didn't want to be heroes but who understood decency. The first was my friend Anna, who had once done compliance work at a bank and knew how to read the quiet logic of suspicious transfers. The second was Marco, a gentle private investigator whose methods were legal and whose heart was less dramatic than mine but steadier. I explained nothing about wanting revenge. I asked for facts and methods and ways to track without revealing the hunt. We moved like careful hunters. Marco traced the nominee's origin to a mailbox service downtown. Anna found phone records that matched transfer dates. I found photos of a certain townhouse on an estate site. A suburban box, beige and smug, exactly the kind of place a man might imagine starting new breakfasts and new lives. The plan I built had 4 parts: evidence, leverage, timing, and repair. Evidence because courts and banks listen to paper. Leverage because truth is less useful if you cannot make the other side feel its cost. Timing because a reveal at the wrong moment can be shrugged off as hysteria. Repair, because revenge that leaves innocent people ruined is not revenge. It is cruelty. I will be honest. The moments before a reveal hum with fear. You know the possible outcomes. Humiliation, legal squabbling, your daughter dragged through tabloids, or worst, that nothing happens and you are left clutching proof like a talisman for nothing. But the alternative, living under the slow theft of your life, seemed worse. I picked our anniversary dinner as the stage. It was a practical choice. We had family coming, mutual friends, and, crucially, people whose testimony and attention mattered. A public place makes private wrongs harder to spin into mist. The night arrived with the kind of quiet theater that belies chaos. Nora slept at her grandmother's and I put on the dress I had bought the summer we moved into the house. The one Mark had loved, the one I had never worn because we never went out. At the restaurant, Mark was the same man who could smile for the room. He kissed my hand in front of friends and made jokes about my obsession with furniture. I tasted my salad and listened for any thrum of normalcy. When the coffee arrived, I asked for the check and then, with a steadiness I had practiced, I said I had a short announcement. My voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. I had rehearsed a different persona. Sharp, relentless, and utterly human. I would not be a caricature. I would be precise. I slid a folder across the table. Inside were copies of emails, screenshots of transfer authorizations, and a map of properties placed on a timeline. I laid them out like a slow confession. The room cooled. The laugh lines around faces froze. People read like juries. I told them simply that Mark had been planning to secure a new house in another county through funds routed away from family accounts. I read a few lines from the emails, clinical, unadorned, and then watched as the air shifted. His cheeks flushed pale. The man who had once been quick with a joke now searched for the same deflection he had learned to use at home. He tried to laugh it off, but the facts were heavy and the table had eyes. That night began a war. Not of fists but of lawyers and ledgers. Mark's first reaction was denial, then anger, then the slippery misunderstanding routine. He hired counsel who painted me as a woman scorned. He offered partial explanations shadowed with blame, blaming my supposed insecurity, blaming stress, even blaming the absence of romance. He had rehearsed these moves when he was calm. It was his performance. But performance crumbles when weighed against documentation. Marco had secured records from the mailbox service. Anna's compliance notes highlighted structured transfers, the very kind banks flag. I had prepared witnesses. A contractor who confirmed the down payment came from an account that had no business justification, and a property manager who noted the buyer changed names in the doc a week after the transfer. The judges and mediators are not interested in melodrama. They want dates, amounts, and signatures. They want sequences that show intent, not passion. So I gave them what they wanted. I did not perform revenge with a scream. I assembled it into a report. The settlement that followed felt like both victory and loss. Kept the house. I secured a financial buffer for Nora and for myself. Mark signed documents that relinquished claims and locked certain accounts under trusteeship. He was required to disclose assets and the purchases he had attempted. There were penalties, and an order for restitution where appropriate. The legal system moved slowly and imperfectly, but it moved. Even so, there were casualties, small ones but real. Mark lost his social standing among some friends. His parents, who liked him for his charm, found themselves forced into awkward conversations about loyalty and ethics. Yet the people I cared about most, Nora, my closest friends, the hourly staff at the cafe I loved, were relatively unscathed. I had kept that promise to myself, to target the rot without burning the forest. What surprised me after the dust settled was not triumph but an odd, quiet sadness. Revenge had cleared a field, but it also uprooted old comforts and rituals. The house felt different for a while. More like a place I inhabited by choice rather than a castle inherited by default. I planted new things in the garden. Lavender for patience, rosemary for remembrance. Simple acts like fixing a loose stair tread or staining the dining table felt like repairs not only to wood but to self. I learned lessons that are not cinematic but matter. First, people are capable of deliberate betrayal. Denial is a powerful anesthetic. Second, the best revenge is often administrative. Paper trails, methodical truth, the steady accumulation of facts. Third, revenge without repair is hollow. If you reclaim what was taken but leave ruin, you are no cleaner than the thief. Years have softened the hard edges. Nora grew into a gracious, curious teenager who hums while she does homework and who knows she is loved without needing theatrics. I work differently now. I sleep better because I spend less energy trusting people who are not trustworthy. I teach a small evening class in practical finance for women who want to protect themselves without becoming paranoid. Some nights, when the house is quiet, I still scroll through old emails and feel that flash of disbelief at how easily a life can be rerouted. Then I close the laptop and go water the lavender. Would I have preferred to find a husband who never planned an escape? Course. But the truth is this: vengeance can be a scalpel, not a sword, if you keep hands steady. Mine was not about celebration, and it was never about cruelty. It was about reclaiming authorship of my life, and then being brave enough to build something worth keeping. If you ever find yourself standing at the edge of a betrayal, remember: prepare your facts, gather your allies, protect the innocent, and repair what you can. Revenge without repair is noise. Revenge with purpose is survival.